Brian Pritchard, FetchYourNews.com, and I'm here today, and I have an opportunity to speak with Georgia former Senator Sam Nunn from 1972 to 1976. Senator Nunn, thank you for sitting down with me. First of all, I think you gave me a test, and I'd like to answer the test first. You said today that when your first term, you served with 3 presidents, 4 vice presidents.
Correct.
So I'd like to see if I can answer that test.
I bet you can.
Okay, I'm going to take a shot here. You served when you got there. Nixon was president.
Right.
Now wait a minute. One of the things is, one of them have the same name. Nixon was president. Gerald Ford was president. Jimmy Carter.
That's right.
Nixon. You started with Spiro Agnew.
That's right.
Huh?
That's right.
Went to Nelson Rockefeller.
Jerry Ford,
Nelson Rockefeller,
and Walter Mondale.
So I got that test right.
Actually, yeah, and I was sitting there with Nixon and actually Hubert Humphrey and about 5 of us were in Nixon's White House. You're going to have to test me on the date. It was either 73 or 74, obviously before he was impeached, when he told us he had something important to tell our group, and we didn't know what it was, and it was that he was having to announce the resignation of Spiro Agnew.
Yes.
So that was before that news came out, and I was sitting there, and Richard Nixon was the one who told us.
Well, I will share this since we're talking. I'm not going to share my age, but I remember Spiro Agnew resigning because our dad, it was back in a generation where our dad made us watch it. You had to watch things like that on TV.
Well, Nixon was under great pressure then already himself.
Yes.
Agnew resigned, and that's when Jerry Ford became vice president.
Am I right? Agnew was from Maryland?
That's right. He'd been governor of Maryland. You got a great memory.
I enjoy this stuff.
I have to think about it myself.
I actually would sit with you all afternoon if the opportunity presented itself. And no disrespect, I'd go back and forth with you all day. But
that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
But a couple things I want to talk about. You're on the campaign trail for your daughter,
correct?
Michelle Nunn. You served from 1972 to 1976. 1972 to 1996. Just a couple things you said today that I want to follow up. I will say this, when I go around the state and I talk to a lot of people, especially in this area, we cover this area, I will hear people like this say they're a Sam Nunn Democrat. They'll say they're a Sam Nunn Democrat. They'll identify themselves that way. A lot of Republicans will say, I'm a Reagan Republican. Okay, so that being said, you said today in '94 you had noticed, not to quote you, that the Democrats had went too far to the left. That's something you said today. You felt they were going too far to the left.
84 time frame.
Or in that area, and you started the Democrat Leadership Council,
right.
And your daughter's opponent said he wouldn't fit in. He wouldn't fit in today. Would you fit in today? David Perdue says, I won't fit in there. And you made that comment. Would Sam Nunn, Senator Sam Nunn, would you fit in the Democrat Party today in Washington?
I would be trying to change it. I'd be trying to change it, but I'd be working with other people to change it. I would not be prosecuting the president. I served with 6 presidents, and I never felt it to the advantage of the state of Georgia or our country to take the attitude that you were going to prosecute the president of the United States. From the point of view of fitting in, it depends on how you interpret that, obviously. But if you mean that you're going to be independent and common sense, I agree with it. But if you mean you're just going to be ornery and you're going to oppose everything that comes down from the other side, and you're going to prosecute the president, I wouldn't be that kind of senator. I try to talk my colleagues into, like we did with the Democratic Leadership Council, I would try to talk my colleagues into having a different kind of Democratic Party. And I would do that. I did it then. I always worked for bringing the Democratic Party to the middle. I would do that, but you got to have somebody to meet in the middle. And right now, the Republican Party has gone as far right or further, in my view, than the Democratic Party did after Vietnam when I came onto the scene. So it's got to come back to the middle. But both parties have to get to the middle. It doesn't help to just one. It's got to be both. And right now, the Republicans need some adjustment.
Well, isn't there 55 Democrat Senate votes at this time? At this time, there's 55. Is there 55 Democrat senators at this time? Is that the number 55?
I believe that's right. I think Republicans have to take 6.
But aren't there so many now? And all due respect, I in your career, I've seen you do that. I mean, you mentioned at something the other day. You said you never sponsored a piece of legislation without Republican co-sponsors.
Never succeeded in passing a significant piece of legislation.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Something like that. But we're not seeing that today. You say the Republicans are so far to the right, and they just, not your words, mine, maybe just want to fight and prosecute. And And
Not all of them, not all of them. some of
but
them.
we're not seeing that on the other side. We're seeing votes of 55 to 0. The largest piece of, you said significant, that was
Yeah.
your word.
Yeah.
The largest piece of legislation put on the American people in my lifetime and yours, is my feeling, is Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. Not one Republican vote. Is that okay with Sam Nunn?
No, no, because when you basically pass something that sweeping, you need some Republican support. You need that for sustainability. So I would have been one of those Democrats, had I been there, and I think Michelle would be the same way, she said that, who would have tried to amend that act before it passed, to try to change it, to try to get some Republicans on board. You weren't going to get a lot of Republicans on board, but if you had 5 or 10 Republicans on board, it would have made a whole lot of difference. Now, the question, it didn't happen. It was passed by just Democratic votes. In my view, that was a mistake, but we now have it, and it's changing our whole healthcare system. Are you going to go up and repeal it? And if you do, what's going to happen with it? No, you can't. You're not going to repeal that act in the next 2 years. The president would veto it. He's not going to be overridden on that. So people who say they're going to basically toss out Obamacare, they're in another world. That's not going to happen in the next 2 years. Could it happen in 4 years? Maybe 6 years. I'm not making a prediction, but it could.
I know you got I'm sorry, sir.
But one other point. But guess what? In 2 years, you got 2/3 of the senators running, out of the 33 running, are going to be Republicans, and they've got at least 7 or 8 exposed seats. So how long are the Republicans going to stay in control if they do? My point is, you got to have senators on both sides working together if you're going to solve health care. Or in 2 years and in 4 years, we're going to be having the same arguments. And in the meantime, people are suffering, and the long-term debt's getting worse. So we got to work together. That's my message. That's my message.
I know you got to get to another event, and you're scheduled one right after another. There are a couple things you brought up that's very important to the campaign, if we could, and again, you brought them up. Commercial after commercial is about, from your daughter, you're not on the ballot, she is. Obama's not on the ballot, he says policies are. I'm not getting into that. But you brought up outsourcing, you did. And right now, commercials about David Perdue outsourcing jobs and Pillotex. And I've read that whole thing there, and I understand it. In all due respect, you sat on the board of General Electric, which was the pioneer of outsourcing. So how is... Now, I'm going to tell you what Grandma would tell me, Senator Nunn. They'd say that's a pot calling the kettle black. Now, that's what Grandma would say to me. And what do you say about that? I mean, you sat on the board of General Electric, the pioneer of outsourcing jobs. And,
I first of all don't agree with you that General Electric is the pioneer of outsourcing.
Well,
jobs.
that's in articles. I apologize for maybe...
There's every major company in America has had to do some outsourcing. There's no question about it.
I grew up in that generation. I understand the outsourcing.
But basically, General Electric right now, I'm not on the board anymore, but General Electric right now is bringing jobs back. And General Electric had always had a pillar of jobs here in America. We got a lot of companies that have just gone completely foreign for sources. So I'm not against outsourcing, and Michelle said this in her debate the other night, it's part of the free enterprise system. But when it happens, when you have to have people in Ellijay, Georgia laid off, when you have people in Dalton, Georgia laid off, Dalton has the highest unemployment rate now in the state of Georgia, is my understanding. When you get people all over Georgia laid off, a CEO that has to do that ought to at least have some pain, right? A couple of tears, a couple of sympathy. But right now, her opponent didn't have that. Basically, he was very, very proud of that. I don't think I have heard any CEO say they were proud of having to send jobs out of America. Sometimes they have to do it. Sometimes it's part of the system. Sometimes they have to do it to save jobs in America. But they're not proud of it. It's one of those things that's painful. It hurts because real people are getting hurt. That's the point.
So you don't think the outsourcing issue of you bringing up outsourcing and what's going on in that, you have no issue with that?
I wouldn't have brought it up if I had an issue with it.
I
think it's a legitimate issue. I think people, when somebody says they're very proud of a role in shipping American jobs abroad, I think that's an issue. We got to figure out how to bring jobs back home. Now, I'm not for a protectionist. I'm for having, I know globalization is part of the deal, but we got to get education systems, skill training. We got to do a lot of things to get our workforce here that are ready to do the jobs here. It's a mentality. Do you want somebody in Washington to think about how we strengthen our jobs at home, or you want them to say, hey, we're in globalization, it doesn't matter how many jobs we ship abroad. It does matter. It matters whether you got skilled training, it matters whether you got education, it matters whether employers are looking to help work with industrial schools and trade schools and so forth for that kind of skill on real machinery. We got a lot of things we can do. I mean, Germany, for instance, they are a model of what you do. They've been defeated in 2 wars, and now they're one of the strongest economies in the world. They have apprenticeship programs. You can do things to keep jobs back here in America, even in a global system. And that's the mentality I think we have in Washington.
Well, I don't.
I've got about 2-3 more minutes.
Okay, well then, executive orders. You said yourself that dictatorship. We didn't. Our Constitution, the way our government's set up, is not set up to have a dictatorship. What is your feeling about amnesty under executive order? What would Sam Nunn say? Because I'm looking at if you were there today.
I think you ought to the president ought to try to work with Congress, minimize the number of executive orders, make sure that they're within the authority. Every president issues executive orders. The question is whether they go too far. The number of executive orders issued by, go back and look at the number issued by President Bush #1, President Bush #2, look at the executive orders under Reagan, look at them under Obama. They've all done it. The question is whether it goes over the line. So you have to be more specific. Which executive order? Now, any kind of immigration bill that Republicans don't like these days, they call amnesty. All you got to do is say amnesty. Well, you know, a lot of Republican sponsors to immigration bill. We got to do something about the immigration problem. If you just label every bill amnesty, no matter what it is, right now the one that's passed the Senate, I understand it, you had 14 Republican co-sponsors. I'm not sure how many, and it was going to be implemented over 13 years. You got to do something about this. This is a problem. I mean, you got to have border protection. You got to make sure we protect our borders, but it all has to be put together in a way. George W. Bush, President George W. Bush, tried to do an immigration bill. He got opposed by his right wing. He had to back off. He wasn't trying to have amnesty. So you just throw the word amnesty out and hope everybody will be against it without thinking about it. That's not the way to legislate.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Senator.
Okay. Thank you.